Alrighty, so this webinar is proudly brought to you by Success Training Academy, and basically this webinar is the first webinar in this series. If you are starting with the design cluster, it's going to be the first webinar that you are going to be listening to as you are traveling through your TAE 40116. You may have started with the language literacy and numeracy unit, or you might be jumping straight into the design cluster. Either is totally fine. But the purpose of this webinar is to essentially help you navigate the course and really attack the short answer questions and have a good solid perspective as you answer those questions. So I'm going to share with you the types of answers that we'll be requiring and how best to do research on the questions themselves. So as you will see with the course, we're going to give you access to pretty much a webinar for pretty much every single aspect of the course. So you're going to have a webinar for the short answer questions, you're going to have a webinar for the projects, and our aim is to hold your hand as you go through it as much as possible. If you are attending our face-to-face workshops, then these webinars will certainly complement those activities and what you learn in the workshop as well. If you're doing this just online, you should find that these webinars will be sufficient enough to help you through all of the requirements as well. All right. So first of all, I'd love to welcome you to these webinars and hope that you find them easy to use and are able to navigate and find exactly what you need. If at any time you do get stuck, feel free to reach out to the office and give them a call. Now, as part of your TA, you are going to have the language literacy and numeracy module. You're going to have the design cluster. You're going to have the delivery cluster and the assessment cluster. Okay. And you will systematically work through each of those clusters in your own time. And if you come along to the face-to-face workshop, they're going to, at the workshop, give you different sections to work through at different times. And a lot of the projects you will start at the workshop as well, all right? But let's get into it. So the purpose of this webinar is to help you out with the design cluster short answer questions. In this cluster, we're looking at covering two particular units, the TAE DES 401, Design and Develop Learning Programs, and the TAE DES 402, Use Training Packages and Accredited Courses, excuse me, to meet client needs, okay? And so what we want you to do and what you need to do is definitely print this booklet out. Otherwise, you will actually have a copy of this booklet given to you at the workshop, okay? But essentially, you could also work on this electronically. That's fine as well, all right? Whatever works for you. And as part of enrolling in the course, you will be given access to a learner guide or a textbook, so to speak, and that will be emailed out to you. And potentially, you will be given a hard copy at the workshop. Having said that, a lot of the questions, you will be able to find the answers on Google, okay? And throughout this webinar, I'm going to give you some strong hints as to how you may research the answers. What you need to appreciate is, as part of a Cert 4 course, the Cert 4 course is not expecting you to necessarily know all the answers, so to speak. However, you would need to be able to research those answers. Okay. At diploma level, you would be able to need to know those answers, but also to apply them and have a good recall of not just the concepts, but also how to actually apply those. All right. So at Cert 4 level, we're not expecting you to know them off the top of your head, but we are expecting you to be able to know where to find the answer, so to speak. Okay. So let's get into it. So you can read through these instructions in your own time. However, basically, they just outline the requirements for your course, all right, and how it all flows, all right? Now, with your course, as I said, there's the language literacy and numeracy cluster, there's a design cluster, delivery cluster, and assessment cluster. All right, and you will get further information on each of those clusters in the instructions when you enroll. All right, now cover sheet and agreement. as I said, you will get a hard copy of each of these pages at the workshop. So this is sort of overarching guidance, so to speak, on this particular section. But obviously, learn it to complete means that you complete it. Name, put your first name and last name, sign it, and put the date. Okay. Name of assessor, date received, date reviewed, completed. You can ignore that section. All right, that's going to be filled out by Success Training Academy assessor. All right. Coming down a bit further, we've got learner name, put your first name and last name in there. Unit date, put that in. Finish date, you would put the date that you actually are submitting your work in there. All right. The rest of this section you can leave blank. That's for Success Training Academy to fill out. Okay. Pop your name in, date, and then the date that you actually submit. Rest of this is Success Training Academy. All right. So coming down now. All right. Coming down. So now we've got the written questions or the short answer questions. All right. So a lot of these answers you'll be able to get in your learner guide by typing in different keywords into, for example, I think it's Control F. You can do a search in the PDF. If you can't do that, just skim read through it. And also, as I said, a lot of these things you will be able to go to Google to find the answers. Okay. Now, in this webinar, I'm going to do my very best to not give you the answers, but give you enough guidance to be able to deduce what the answers may be. Okay. Now, let's go through it. And I really hope that you have a pad and pen ready. And I really suggest that if you ever get stuck, just pause, rewind, and re-listen to that section again. I encourage you to listen to this webinar a number of times because it's going to really help you cement the knowledge, okay? And as part of the TAE, remembering that you are doing the TAE in order to become a trainer, it's critically important that as part of the fundamentals of learning, you appreciate that it takes multiple exposures for somebody to not just absorb the information, but to integrate it and apply it. Okay? And the integration and applying is really going to happen when you are going through the projects that you do later on in these in each of these different clusters. Okay, so all training programs, question 1, all training programs must be based on formal training packages, true or false. Okay, now the key part of this question is all training programs. Okay, so if it said all nationally accredited training courses or all nationally accredited training programs, then we may say that it is okay, but because it doesn't say all nationally accredited training programs, we're probably going to go over here. Okay, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Okay, so this is a bit of a trick question, and it is highlighting to you the critical importance of understanding terminology. Okay, so really, really important. Okay, so hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Not sure how more clearly I can put that. Okay, so question 2. Each of the following would be considered a benchmark. Please place a tick beside those that would be considered benchmarks for nationally accredited training and assessment. Okay, so qualification descriptions. All right, so we need to think about, is it nationally accredited? And what we mean by that is this something that everybody agrees to, and is it standard across all RTOs? Or is it something that may be varied across different organizations? Okay, so also keep in mind what the meaning of a benchmark is. So a benchmark is essentially a standard that somebody must hit. All right, so qualification descriptions, I would say very strongly yes on that. Assessment plan, yes, I would say so. Licensing requirements, yes, I would say so. Units of competency, yes, I would say so. Okay, standard operating procedures or work instructions, maybe, maybe not. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Okay, because that would be company specific. Assessment instruments or tools? Yes, absolutely. Evidence requirements? Yes, absolutely. Organization policies and workplace procedures? Well, again, that is a little bit company specific, so maybe, maybe not. Work health and safety legislation, codes of practice? Yes, maybe, maybe not, but I'm going to lean towards yes on that one, okay? Because even though it's going to be different across workplaces, you're going to find that within the units of competency, they're always going to mention workplace health and safety, okay? Course outlines? Not really, okay? That's not really specific as a benchmark, okay? So coming down, question 3, list 2 workplace standards that could be used as benchmarks for training, okay? So here, we could think about what are 2 workplace KPIs or standard operating procedures that you could use in order to be a benchmark or guidepost for training, okay? So you may have something like WHS. You may have something like what else? Customer complaints, okay, or the customer service standard operating procedures, okay, or you may have a certain productivity level, okay. So just think about your industry, your workplace. What are 2 types of standards or 2 standards that you think of when you would be setting a benchmark for your staff as you train them up? Okay. So coming down, question 4, explain the difference between an accredited course and a training package. Okay. Now, this is a great one to start doing your Google research on, okay? And what I highly recommend that you do is go to Google and type in accredited course, okay? And then also go to Google and type in training package and start to notice the differences in the definitions that Google gives you, okay? What I also recommend that you do is take note of the following. Okay, now an accredited course, I'm just going to give you a couple of hints here. An accredited course is very, how do I put this? Target market specific, okay? And some examples of an accredited course or how an accredited course may come about is maybe you are a company and you have decided that you are wanting to take your standard training and make it nationally, how do I put it? Nationally accredited across all of your branches. So, for example, Woolworths supermarket has an accredited course to actually work with become a member and become a employee at Woolworths. All right, so they have an accredited course that people actually go through when they join Woolworths. Okay. Now, an accredited course is typically the IP of that company. A training package, on the other hand, is listed on training.gov.au, training.gov.au, and that is the main website where you can access all units of competency. However, a training package is accessible to everybody, and everybody can see the contents of that course, all right? That qualification or an entire training package, okay? Also, a training package is often very industry specific. So, for example, it may be the meat industry or the hospitality industry or the health industry, okay? Now, an accredited course is going to be much more narrow in focus, okay? And it's going to be more so specifically tailor-made to a company, okay? So, training package is going to be nationally recognized and it's going to be open source information. No particular person owns the intellectual property on it. An accredited course, the person that develops it owns the intellectual property, okay? Some common accredited courses are often found in the area of teaching English as a second language. There could be other accredited courses such as the Cert 4 in Life Coaching. Okay, that's an accredited course, but that is the intellectual property of the RTO that developed it. Okay, and if you wanted to find out what was in that particular course, you would have to purchase those materials from that organization. Okay, so what I highly recommend that you do is go to Google and type in accredited course, and then get some notes on it. Go to Google, type in training package, and notice the differences. Okay, you will find ample websites to describe that. Okay. Question 5, complete the table below to show the 3 components of a nationally accredited training package and the purpose of each. Okay, so component 1 is going to be, for example, the Australian Qualifications Framework qualifications. Okay, so qualifications, all right, and so you could put qualifications document, and here you can put in what is the purpose of the AQF, all right, Australian Qualifications Framework. Okay, next part is the units of competency. All right, so you can put in unit of competency, and the purpose, you can Google unit of competency and see what it says. And then in here, you can put assessment requirements document. Okay, assessment requirements document. All right, and in the purpose, just Google what is the purpose of the assessment requirements document. However, I'm going to give you a strong hint and say it's probably the document that tells you the types of skills and knowledge that you need to test a student on. Okay, and as we're going through this webinar, you definitely want to be thinking of writing your answers in your own words. Don't just use the words I use. Okay. The other thing I do need to mention as we go through this is you want to put your answers in sentences, and they want to be up to date, and they want to be your own answers. Okay, so when you go through the assessment cluster, we specifically talk about what are the critical criteria that an answer must meet. Okay, but for the purposes of this webinar, I will mention it now. So your answers must be correct. They must be your own answers. The answers must be up to date, and the answer must be long enough. And by the definition of long enough, we mean that they are sentences and they include enough detail to answer the question. All right. Some of these, as we go through them, you could use dot points. That's fine if the question says, for example, list. Okay, and that's what we're going to do on the next one. All right, but if the question said describe or explain or summarize or something like that, you do need to describe and summarize and explain in full answer sentences. All right, so question 6, list 5 of the principles of adult learning. Okay, this is not a trick question. Basically, we encourage you to go to Google and type in principles of adult learning, Malcolm Knowles. All right, that's as complicated as it gets in order to find the answer. All right, so you can go ahead and do that. All right, question 7, list 4 of the 5 principles of instructional design. So what we recommend you do is go to Google and type in instructional design and see what comes up. This is a great question also to start to get you to explore and investigate what is instructional design and how do you become a great instructional designer, and what are the key components that will really lead towards how do I put this? Creating great learning materials and great assessments. Okay, instructional design is a fascinating area to get into, and I absolutely love it. All right. Now, next one, question 8. Suggest one action a trainer might take to ensure resources are available within the required time frame. Okay, so with this, essentially, it's asking you a question such as, let's see if that, okay. Essentially, it's asking you the question of, if you had a class to teach tomorrow, for example, how would you make sure that you had the resources that you needed in order to teach that class, or in order to make sure you had the learning resources available? So hint, hint, nudge, nudge, you probably want to make sure that you find out how many students you have, you find out how many copies you need of those materials, and you want to make sure that you photocopy them a couple of days beforehand. Maybe if we're talking about equipment here, maybe you want to make sure that the equipment's going to be available, talk to relevant people, make sure you've got access to the room, all those different kinds of things, okay? So, question 9. List 3 questions a trainer should ask when developing new learning activities. Okay, so questions could be things like, is it going to be safe? What are the language literacy and numeracy levels of my students? It could be, where could we use the activity? It could be, how do I want my learners to feel as they go through the activity? It could be, what else? What level of instructions do I need to give? Next question could be, what do I want my learners to take away from the activity? Okay. Another question could be, are my learners visual, auditory, or kinesthetic? Is the activity going to match their learning styles? Okay. What are the learning backgrounds of my students? Okay, so there are just some of the questions that you could ask, and you could pick any of those, or you come up with your own questions and pop them in there. All right. So question 10 is looking at the different ways that we could actually present information. All right. Now, I'll give you the delivery methods, but you need to come up with the advantages and disadvantages yourself. All right. So delivery methods, number 1 could be face-to-face. Okay, face-to-face. Another one could be online. Okay, so that could be when you're actually doing a Zoom video, which is real time. Okay, and then the other one that you may have is distance learning. Right, the difference between online and distance is let's say that online you do have the interactive let's say webinars and videos and different things going on, but distance, it is just providing a textbook to a student and not really providing much more than the assessments and the textbook, okay? So advantages and disadvantages, you can have a think about that yourself. However, just think about access to a trainer, think about maybe how long it may take you to complete a course, think about direct feedback and support that you may receive, how readily available that support might be. All right, so just to recap, we've got face-to-face, we've got online, and we've got distance, okay? So let's come down. Question 11, list 3 legislative policies that could affect training and assessment and give 1 reason why, okay? So what I suggest that you do is go to Google and type in training and assessment policies, okay? Or RTO policies, okay? And just start to get a sense of the types of policies that an RTO may have. Okay. Now, just to give you some off the top of my head, you may have an appeals policy. Okay, for students that want to appeal an assessment decision. You may have a complaints policy. Okay. You may have a WHS safety policy. Okay. You may have lots of different policies for credit transfer or RPL. Okay, or confidentiality and privacy. Okay, so you may also find policies on administration, okay? So what I recommend that you do, as I said, is go to an RTO's webpage and start to see and notice some of the policies they have, and then make a note, well, how could that actually impact the training and assessment that you provide, all right? Just one simple one. Let's say privacy and confidentiality, all right? Let's say that was policy. Well, how would that impact the training? Well, you would need to make sure that trainers do not divulge private information of learners to other learners or outside parties. Okay, so that would be one way to answer that. All right, so safety. Well, how would safety impact training and assessment? All right, it's pretty clear-cut answer on that. You could, I'm sure you'd be able to come up with some ways that safety would impact your training. Okay. Question 12, lists pieces of OH&S knowledge a trainer should have and apply to all training environments. Okay, now, as we know, it could be OH&S or it could be WHS, okay? As we know, some states are still OHS and other states are WHS, okay? So, for this question, just start to think about, as a trainer, what types of safety knowledge would you need to have? And just to broadly describe it, I would say that a trainer would need to know, well, what are the safety considerations for the training room that they're going to use, the training equipment that they're going to use, or the equipment that they're going to train people on, and the safety aspects of that. They may need to be aware of insurance obligations that may be required. They may need to be aware of how to do a safety induction for learners. They may need to be aware of how to do a risk assessment on a training environment, okay? So there's lots of different things that a trainer would need to be aware of when delivering training, all right? So just list at least 3 or 4 things in there, okay? Now, question 13, explain the purpose of the AQF. Well, the AQF stands for Australian Qualifications Framework. And what I recommend that you do is go to Google and type in AQF and read a little bit about it, all right? Essentially, in a very broad sense, the AQF is the list of qualifications that you, and the, how do I put this? The level expectations for a learner that may be going through each of the levels. So for example, certificate 1, 2, 3, 4, diploma, advanced diploma, all the way up to a PhD, okay? So there is an actual document called the Australian Qualifications Framework, and you can read through, well, what are the skills and knowledge required at a Cert 1 level, at a Cert 2 level, all right? And go ahead, read through the intro of the document, and just get a feel for it, and then in your own words, explain what the purpose of the AQF would be, all right? Now, coming down, question 14, what does the acronym AISC stand for? Well, I recommend that you Google that. I'll tell you now that it is a key organisation in the approval of training packages, all right? So you'll be able to grab the definition of AISC and pop it in there. And that's just a simple Google search. Explain the organisation's purpose. Again, I'm going to give you some broad background of what it does. So there is an organisation called SSOs, and they develop the training packages, all right? They write the training packages, and you would find out more of this information when you watch the other webinars that we have associated with the design cluster, all right? So if you've watched those, you'll understand what each of the organisations do. However, let's assume that you haven't watched those webinars. Explain the organisation's purpose. Well, essentially, as I said, the SSOs write the training packages, and then the AISC is a government body or group of people that come together and they review the training package, and then they either approve it or deny it and send it back to the SSO for further rectifications, okay? So AISC, their job is to approve training package changes, all right? But definitely Google AISC and see what comes up and do some basic reading around that. Okay, question 15, name the 4 dimensions of competency. Okay, well, dimensions of competency essentially are the 4 ways that we would know that somebody is competent. I'll say it again. It is the 4 ways that we would know that somebody is competent. So, for example, if I wanted to test somebody on their ability to drive a forklift, well, I'm going to need to make sure that their performance hits each of these 4 criteria. Okay, and what I recommend that you do is Google dimensions of competency. Okay, now essentially we want to make sure that they can do it. They can do it, and they can do it while other things are happening. They can do contingency management, and last of all, they can do it in multiple different environments. Okay, so I will not tell you the specific 4 dimensions of competency. However, if you go to Google and type in dimensions of competency, you'll be able to read up on it. But essentially, it's can they do it? Can they do it while doing other things? Can they contingency plan? And last of all, can they do it in multiple different places? Okay, so coming down, question 16. What information do each of the following sections contain in an accredited course template? Now, this is a bit of a trick question, and at the same time, it's not, okay? In order to find this information, you specifically need to go to Google and you need to type in ASQA, so ASQA, ASQA, accredited course template, okay? And that's going to lead you to a document that is a template on how to put together a application to put together an accredited course, okay? So, for example, if you, let's say we're a company and you wanted to get a course nationally accredited, well, ASQA provides you a template to fill in order to apply for that to happen, okay? Now, this question is simply asking you what are the 3 sections of that template, okay? So don't overthink the question, just simply in Google put ASQA, ASQA, accredited course template. And it's going to bring it up as a PDF, and you simply scroll through it and identify what is section A, what is section B, and what is section C, okay? If you get stuck, just give the office a call and they'll be able to help you out, all right? Question 17, explain the structured format of a unit of competency. So for this question, I'm not going to necessarily tell you what the how do I put this? I'm not going to tell you what each section does, but I'm going to tell you what each section you must mention. If you want to find out more information, re-listen or listen to the webinars that we've done on the design cluster, which actually goes through this, okay? So a unit of competency, essentially, we have the following components. We have elements, we have performance criteria, and then we have performance evidence, knowledge evidence, and assessment conditions. Okay, I'll say it again. We have elements, we have performance criteria, we have performance evidence, we have knowledge evidence, and we have assessment conditions. So if you need me to say that again, definitely grab a pen and write this down. So we've got elements, we've got performance criteria, we've got performance evidence, we've got knowledge evidence, and we have assessment conditions. So what I recommend that you do is go to Google and type in unit of competency, and maybe even type in structure of unit of competency, all right? See what comes up. However, what I need you to do is list each of those sections, okay? So list element, so put in element, performance criteria, knowledge evidence, performance evidence, and assessment conditions, okay? The order doesn't matter, but I just want you to list each of those sections and explain what each of those items are, okay? So coming down, question 18, explain what is meant by the following terms, Okay, so qualification prerequisite, qualification pathway, qualification standard and assessment tool, and assessment. Okay, so qualification prerequisite is basically a qualification that somebody must do before they start the next one or they start any qualification. So for example, if you were working in the safety industry, all right, before you start the diploma of WHS, you must have completed the Cert 4 in WHS, okay? So some qualifications will have a prerequisite, others may not, okay? And there is oodles and truckloads of qualifications out there that do have prerequisites, okay? And what I do recommend that you do is go to training.gov.au and check out what are some qualifications that may actually have some prerequisites, okay? You may find that qualifications in childcare, qualifications in medical fields, you may find qualifications in carpentry or plumbing may have qualification prerequisites, okay? Qualification pathway, well, this is talking about the future. So for example, what is the next qualification that you could do after completing a previous one? So for example, qualification pathway for a certificate 3 is a certificate 4, okay? If you're doing a certificate 1, well, qualification pathway after a certificate 1 is certificate 2, okay? And let's say you were doing a diploma. Well, a qualification pathway after that could be a bachelor degree or a advanced diploma. Okay, so those are different directions that a student may head in after they complete a course that they do. Okay, competency standard. Well, another word for competency standard is unit of competency. All right. And basically, a competency standard is something that we are measuring somebody's performance against, either in the workplace or within an RTO environment. Okay, an assessment tool. Okay, now assessment tool, again, this is one that you definitely want to Google and get a good range of definitions on. However, I'll give you a definition here that can help you along your journey. But essentially, assessment tool is the overall collection of all the assessments. So an assessment tool, I want you to think about as a workbook, okay? So for example, in a unit of competency, when you assess a student, you may have an observation checklist for a practical task they do. You may also have a short answer question booklet that they do, or a couple of pages. You may also have, let's see, a verbal interview that you do. Now, all of those things combined is an assessment tool, okay? Now, as part of the assessment tool, you do need benchmark answers, so a marker's guide, you need a student booklet, okay? So all of those things combined is an assessment tool. On the other hand, an assessment or an assessment instrument is basically just one of those items. So for example, an assessment instrument would be an observation checklist, okay? Now that would be part of the entire assessment tool, okay? A short answer question, let's see, list of questions, well, that would be an assessment instrument because that's part of the assessment tool, okay? So this is the minor parts and this is the overall parts, okay? Hopefully that makes sense, okay? So question 19, just with this, you just need to be aware of the terminology because you will hear it used. You need to understand, well, the differences of it, okay? So coming down, question 19, when putting together the units of a formal qualification, you are allowed to use whichever combination of core and elective units you wish, true or false. Okay, now in the other webinars that Success Training Academy have provided on the design cluster, we do go through what's called packaging rules, okay? Now, packaging rules essentially tell you what core and elective units you can use and how you put together a course, okay? So obviously for question 19, I will tell you that the answer is false, okay? And I will encourage you to Google and type in the words packaging rules and just read up on what packaging rules are. Okay, so the answer here is false. Okay, you can't use just whichever units you want. You need to follow the packaging rules. Okay, but just have a look on Google as to why that may be important, and just have a read about how packaging rules come into play. Okay, question 20: what do the following acronyms stand for? Well, I've already told you what AQF stands for. Okay, Australian Qualifications Framework. Okay, TGA, I'll give you this one. But essentially it means the acronym for the website training.gov.au. Okay, so you want to put in the website there, www.training.gov.au. Okay, next one, NCVER, you can Google what that is. RTO, you can Google what that is. SSO, you may want to Google that by using SSO in vet sector, okay, because there's a lot of things out there that actually have the acronym SSO. All right. So, but just go out there and type in SSO in vet sector. I will tell you now that the SSO, they are the ones that write the training packages, and we talked about that previously. Okay. But just go to Google and type in SSO in vet sector. Okay. ASQA. Go ahead, put that in Google, and just see what comes up for ASQA. Okay. All right. Okay. List one component of a training package that can be contextualized. Okay. Now, key thing to understand is that you need to be able to understand what the word contextualize means. Okay. And that, as we talked about in the other design cluster webinars, that essentially means that you are tailoring the content to the audience and tailoring your examples to the audience. All right. What I do recommend that you do is go to Google and type in what can be contextualized in units of competency, what cannot be contextualized. All right, and there is ample blogs out there, ample comments out there on what can be, what can't be. Okay, but ultimately, how you would contextualize a unit of competency is by making specific reference to specific examples for a workplace. So for example, in the unit, if it talks about the performance criteria such as follow safety procedures, what you could actually do is in the unit, you could actually make a note and say, follows the safety procedures of, and you could list them out, okay? So you can certainly contextualize performance criteria and expand upon them, okay? List one part of a training package that cannot be contextualized. Well, you can't change the wording of the assessment conditions. You can't change the wording of the performance evidence and knowledge evidence, okay? So definitely go to Google and type in what can be contextualized, what can't be contextualized, and you'll find it pretty well discussed and explained on Google there, all right? So question 23, list and explain 3 endorsed components of a national training package. Okay, now for this one, what I recommend that you do is go to Google and type in endorsed components of training package, and it's going to tell you the 3 endorsed components, okay? I may give you a hint, and I may say qualifications framework, I may say units of competency, and I may say assessment requirements or assessment requirements document, all right? And I may say, go to Google and explain each of those 3, all right? However, if you go to Google and type in endorsed components of training package, you are going to find those 3 is listed there. Question 24, list 3 sources of information relating to training packages. All right, so I'm going to give you some strong hints on this. All right, so you may go to training.gov.au. You may go to the SSOs because they write the training packages. All right, but what I recommend that you do is list out maybe a couple of the SSOs. Okay, and maybe find out who is the SSO for the TAE. That's an interesting activity. Definitely recommend that you do that. And number 3 there, I recommend that you maybe also think about who is the regulating body. Maybe it's ASQA, maybe it's ASQA. All right. Now, another one you could potentially think of is AISC. All right. Another one you could think of is the IRC. All right. But those are just some different ones, and you can apply those to your desire. Question 25, which organisation majors development and modifications of training packages? Well, we've kind of answered that already, and the AISC may come to mind as you read that question. All right. Name the body that holds final responsibility for the development of training packages. Again, maybe the answer to question 25 and 26 is very similar. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. All right. Question 27. Name the body responsible for approving accredited courses. Okay. This one is actually ASQA. All right. So definitely write out ASQA and what it stands for there. Question 28. Explain the relationship between licensing requirements and the vet sector. Okay. So there are a number of how do I put this? Industries that actually require a license and a qualification in order to do the job. So for example, to be a licensed real estate agent, you need to have your real estate license and you need to have your Cert 4 property services. To be a security guard, you need to have completed your Cert 2 or Cert 3 in security and have your security license, okay? So just in here, write some examples of where that may come into play, and also maybe write in some explanation as to how one could lead to the other, and also how you can't operate in an industry without having both of them. Okay, so just use your own words in that section there. Question 29, explain the role of a prerequisite in a qualification. Okay, so just have a think about why would you have a prerequisite before you allow people to start on a new course. All right, why would you want to set a benchmark before you allow somebody to start the next qualification? So just have a think about that. All right. Question 30. Refer to the implementation guide for business services training package and state one condition with which an RTO must comply when contextualizing a unit. Okay. So what I recommend that you do is go to Google and type in business services training package and then put contextualization or contextualizing unit. All right. And see what comes up for you. Okay. This is very similar to that question of what can you contextualize and what can't you contextualize. Okay. So question 31, read the assessment guidance in the TAE training package and list 3 points assessors must be aware of if they were to assess a candidate. So number 1 could be that an assessor must have the TAE 40110 plus the required units, or the TAE 40116, okay? Next one, they must have industry currency, which means that they must be out in the field regularly, making sure they are up to date with what's going on. Number 3, they must also do PD, professional development, within the vet sector as well, all right? So, coming down. Question 32, okay? Now, let me just see if I can. All right, so what we have here is, let me just see if I can, yes, let me zoom in, okay. So what you want to do here, let's see if I can zoom in even more, okay. So what you want to do is you want to go to Google, all right? So let me just check this out. So question 32 is asking you, A, Mandy is keen to undertake some training in vet compliance. Conducted a search on training.gov.au and found these 2 courses are available. She's keen to know what the courses consist of, but has found they are accredited courses and the content is unavailable. As we talked about previously, an accredited course means it's the IP of the person actually developed it. Okay, so here the question's asking you, record the contact details of the course contact person of each. Okay, now I'm going to give you a hint and a strong nudge that the answers for 1 and 2 are exactly the same. But what you need to do, okay, is you need to go to Google and just type in Cert 4 in vocational education and training compliance and push enter, and you're going to find the answer to, or this page will actually show up. Okay. If you go to Google and type in Diploma in Vocational Education Training Compliance Management, okay, and push enter, you're going to find that this page will show up as one of the search results as well. Okay. Now, if you get stuck on this question, just pause on it, park on it, and just ask your trainer when you go to the actual workshop. However, all you need to do is just go to Google and type in Cert 4 in vocational education training compliance, hit enter, see what comes up, all right? But I'm going to tell you now the answers for 1 and 2, they're exactly the same that you're going to put in there, all right? And what you need to put in is the person's name and their phone number and their email and their address, if you can find that. But again, same person that developed both of those courses, okay, the Cert 4 and the diploma. Okay, now, B, David is an automotive engineer and is keen to find out what courses are available for an apprentice he has recently engaged. Research training.gov.au and recommend 2 courses, qualifications that could be considered suitable for the apprentice. So how would you go about that? Well, essentially go to training.gov.au, okay, and put in the keywords of what have we got here? Automotive, all right, just put in the word automotive, okay. Another one you could put in is vehicle, okay. Another one could be car, okay. But if you put in the word automotive, all right, you are going to come across some quite relevant qualifications that you could put in. So a Cert 1, Cert 2, Cert 3, automotive engineering and car repair, car maintenance, all those different ones, okay. So another one could be mechanical engineering, probably not that one, or mechanical repair, okay? And just experiment with the keywords that you come across and know that there's no perfect answer, but for B here, you want to probably recommend a certificate 1, 2, or 3 because we've got an apprentice that's starting, not a higher level person, okay? So coming down, question 33. In 2 to 3 sentences, explain your understanding of the term reasonable adjustment in vet, okay? So ultimately, reasonable adjustment is about making it fair for everybody, okay? And so for example, if somebody can't read or write, then obviously we would want to provide them extra support, and there's different ways that that could be done, okay? So what I recommend that you do is go to Google and type in reasonable adjustment in vet sector, all right, and see what comes up. And as you're Googling, you're going to come across ample examples of reasonable adjustment, okay? Okay, and give 2 reasons why reasonable adjustments are made, okay? And so we definitely want to think about making sure that we don't discriminate against anyone. And we want to think about making sure that all learners have equal and fair opportunities, all those things, okay? Another one could be, we want to make sure that if a learner is learning via distance, we want to give them opportunities to still be assessed via videos and different things, okay? So reasonable adjustment in VET, it's all about providing equal, fair and opportunity, okay? C, give 2 examples of occasions when reasonable adjustment may be made, okay? So maybe you've got someone in a wheelchair, maybe you've got someone that can't read and write, maybe they've got visual impairment, physical impairment, maybe they've got, what else? LN challenges, all those different things, okay? So coming out, question 34, list 2 VET policies that could impact on the way training assessment is conducted and give a reason for each, okay? So this is very quite similar to a previous question, looking at the VET policies, all right? So one of the policies could be privacy and confidentiality, another one could be reasonable adjustment, another one could be what else? An appeals policy. Another one could be plagiarism policy. Okay, so list the policy and then how would that impact training assessment? Okay, next question. You are about to prepare the training program for a candidate and have just visited training.gov.au and found out the qualification has changed from BSB 40507 to BSB 40515. Okay, compare the 2 qualifications and list changes in the new qualification. Okay, so go ahead, do that. Go to Google and type in BSB 40 and go to training.gov.au. Notice maybe code changes in the units. Maybe notice if any cores and electives have changed. Maybe notice if any of the assessment requirements have changed. A very simple one here is, well, the 07 and the 15 have changed, okay? That's one thing. Maybe notice if it's more specific on how the units must be assessed, all right? But just read through the explanations of this qualification and then this one on train.gov.au and just notice the differences and list them here, all right? C, list 3 benefits to an organisation and all concerned when work is conducted in accordance with the organisation's quality assurance policy. Well, basically, this is asking you the question, if quality training and assessment is delivered, how does an organisation benefit? So, for example, if quality education is provided, how do students benefit? Right? Well, obviously they benefit by efficiently learning the skills and knowledge, and it will help them to acquire a job. Okay, second one could be, will the staff have good, solid employment stability? Okay, and you know, it's good for business, it's good for sales and all of that. Okay. Number 3, well, compliance-wise, the company is going to stay compliant and it's going to stay in business, and it won't have sanctions or fines applied to it from ASQA. Okay, and also obviously that the students will know that the RTO is following the rules and regulations and the standards. Okay, so just have a think about what are some ways an organisation is going to benefit if it follows its quality assurance policy framework. Okay, so that, folks, is essentially the end of the short answer questions. What we do need you to do is sign it and pop the date, okay, once you have finished all those questions. Okay, after that, we have so the beginning of the projects, okay? But for the purposes of this webinar, okay, this is as much as we are going to cover, all right? So if you get stuck on any portion, all you need to do is go back and rewind and rewatch. But through the purpose of, through this webinar, I really wanted to demonstrate how to be flexible in your strategies as a learner. Yes, certainly you will find some things in the textbook and the learner guide, but at a certain level, we are encouraging you to think outside the textbook as well, all right? So hopefully this has all made sense for you as I've gone through it. If you watch this in combination with the other webinars that you will be sent and the links, we I'm pretty confident that you'll be able to answer each of these questions. Okay, so don't overthink them. If you are stuck on any, just email the office or give them a call or bring your questions themselves to the workshop, and the trainer there will be able to help you with that. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for playing along as we went through, and I hope you took lots of great notes. And we wish you the very best of luck with each of the sections of your assessment and your journey with Success Training Academy. Okay.